Okay, so welcome to this session on manage risk. We're looking at BSBRSK501B, and today we're focusing on section 1 of that unit, which is all around establish of risk context. I'm the facilitator, Conrad Palmer. This session is designed to give you an overview of this unit of studying or managing risk. It doesn't replace the learning materials and we've provided online. It gives you another view of that material. And it should assist you with the completion of the assessment tasks. A video of this session will be posted on our YouTube account for review on the next 48 hours. Right now I've got you all on mute. You can ask questions using the question box on the right hand side of your screen. If we get time, I'll try to answer those questions. So moving forward. Like I said, today we're focusing on establishing this context. In future presentations, we'll also work on the next 3 areas, which are identifying risks, analysing risk, and select and implement treatments. Today's presentation should assist you with your assessment questions from 1 through to 8. So listen out for the areas and clues. We're going to assist you with completing those assessments. Right, let's get into it. So what is risk? Well, operating a business or crossing the road involves an element of risk. Okay, there's rarely safe options. Anything you do has a chance of being beneficial or costing you in some way. Whether you work in a retail environment, manufacturing or service environment, doing business exposes you to all kinds of intrinsic meaning within, internally, or extrinsic, externally, risks through your business. You know, some of the risks you associated within your business, your reputation, human capital, the people in your business, their operational risks, from workplace health and safety, through to the procedures you use to operate your business. There are all kinds of technological risks that you take, not only again in terms of health and safety, but in terms of the technology that applies to your business and staying current. Financial risk speaks for itself. You have to take risks sometimes in business in order to make profit. And obviously we'll talk about strategic risk too. And then obviously externally you rely on other people to supply your business. That's a risk. You have competition in the marketplace. You may perform better than you. That's a risk. We have man-made disasters, things going wrong, natural disasters, hurricanes and cyclones. Things beyond your control, like the political climate legislation. Depending on whether it's a Labour government or a Liberal government, that may affect the Labour policies, which can affect the way you run your business. Governments forever changing legislation, carbon tax in 1 minute, it's out the next. Those sort of things will affect your business. And of course there's social and technology as well outside of your business that can affect how you run your business, which effectively creates risk. So risk identified in Australian standards AZNZ ISO 31000-2009 as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. So a risk management process helps organisations identify the problems, analyse them, assess the organisation's capacity to cope, and then manage that risk. Keep in mind, we need to strike a balance at all times between risk and return. Before you begin your risk management project, it's always important to take the time to review the organisation's risk management policies and procedures. Different organisations create different levels of expectations for risk management strategies, along with different levels of trade-offs between cost effectiveness and acceptable risk. You need to know this information so you can keep your risk management project within the company's guidelines. You may also find company's procedures provide some idea of specific areas of risk that you should include within your risk management assessment. Typically, companies face the same sort of risk repeatedly with different products, projects or locations. So if it's your company's standard procedure to include certain types of risk in assessments, you want to be sure to include them. Another thing to look for as you're reviewing the company's risk management procedures is any specific formatting requirements for these plans. Military police and fire departments are famous for creating contingency plans for many different potential emergencies, and they always follow the same format in any of their plans. And this allows the reader of the plan to quickly find the information they need. The benefits of the systematic approach speak for themselves. You've got minimal disruption from unexpected events. It allows you to exploit opportunities, and also, of course, by analysing risk, you can improve your business performance, whilst increasing your efficiency and economy of the business, create better relationships with your stakeholders, that's people involved in the business, and of course, more importantly, protect your business and your brand. If you find yourself needing to implement a contingency plan, following your standardised format can save critical minutes in implementation. Instead of really having to look for information, they know the format and know where to find what they need to know in order to follow through the process. If any of the risk management assessments that have been done in parallel parts of the organisation, such as the business units or the locations, you may want to consider getting your hands on copies of those risk management assessments and plans. You shouldn't just blanket copy their work into yours, but there's no reason to duplicate effort that's already been expended. Often risk management plans created for other company facilities can be adapted to your needs with only minor modifications, which obviously is cost and time saving for yourself and the company. A bit of risk terminology here while we're talking. So when we say corporate governance, we're talking about the systems by which organisations are directed, controlled and held accountable. So basically, corporate governance is how the business manages itself. The policies and procedures it has in place in order to manage its various facets, and in this case, of course, how it's going to manage risk. When we talk about risk appetite and capacity, we're talking about the amount of risk the organisations will take to achieve the objectives. Now, the appetite and capacity will vary from company to company. Small organisation, one-man bands, less than 5 employees, or maybe $100 million a year, will have a different attitude to risk to a multinational organisation with vast resources and deep pockets. A larger organisation has more resources available in order to look at risk and also, of course, in order to cope with and manage risk, and maybe a larger appetite for taking on risk. Whereas an individual small operator has to make decisions based on their own smaller objectives, which means they may have a less large appetite for risk. And the risk management strategy is the framework that we use and the principles of the organisation to manage risk. So when we say strategy, we mean plan. What is the plan the organisation has in place, or plans, so the number of plans, to manage its risk? Actually, a little bit of activity 1, by the way. So when we're talking risk management strategy, we've got to consider all kinds of factors. Okay? In one sense, developing risk management strategy is a bit like crystal ball gazing. You've got to try and foresee things that don't yet exist. But you've got to temper that crystal ball gazing with cold, hard analysis. Pie in the sky predictions don't mean much if they aren't based on some sort of fact. And yes, it's really easy to turn as Chicken Little, running around screaming, the sky's falling in, the sky's falling in. But okay, so what? Even if the sky's falling in, do you have a plan to deal with it? If not, you haven't done your job. Every potential risk needs a contingency plan. You aren't seeking out these risks to run around like Chicken Little, but rather develop a means of propping up the sky, or if that proves impossible, to make sure your company can survive without it. And there's all kinds of risks you need to consider. Okay, you've got your competitors. What are they doing and how they're affecting your business? You've got your commercial relationships with your suppliers and other businesses. And if one of your major suppliers goes out of business, that could affect your ability to service your customers. You've got the behaviour of people inside your business. That's human behaviour. As well as, of course, you've got fads, customers changing habits and behaviours. You can be your product can be in 1 minute and out the next. Consider individual activities of people within your organisation. Key personnel within the organisation. You want to know a dangerous hobby, skydiving. If it's important to business, that could affect you in a big way. We've said before, legislation changes all the time and can have major impacts on your business and the profitability of what you do, as can your management activities and the way you control your business. Natural events, major events. Cyclones in northern Queensland have impacted sometimes on banana growing. Something to keep in mind. Political circumstances always affect the economy, not just, of course, internally in terms of Australia. Think globally. Political events around the world have an impact on oil prices, and oil prices therefore have an impact on your pocket and how you spend your money. And of course, technology. Technology changes all the time. It improves, it updates, it moves forward, and your business needs to be aware of that. Now, this slide here is showing you the basic concept of a risk process. Today we're talking a lot about identifying, establishing the context. And as I've already said, in the future slides presentation, we'll talk about identifying the risks, analysing the risks, evaluating those risks, and treating those risks. What you need to realise is throughout that, it's a very easily flowed process, there has to be consultation and communication with your team, and you have to be monitoring and evaluating what's going on at all times through that process. When determining the scope of your risk management process, you need to think along practical lines that are in agreement with your organisation's plans. Try and develop risk management programs that extends across geographically separate business units or different projects. It can be really difficult. So consider each risk or project you review. It's got its own will have its own unique facts at play. Its scope. Now, when we say scope, it's as much about what you're not including as what you're including. But when you're looking at a risk management plan, you've got to limit it in some way. Otherwise, you're just trying to cover too wide an area. So give some thought to the idea that some projects require risk management plans. Some specific business areas might require a plan. Certain functions like finance, workplace health and safety, operations may require risk management plans. You might write a plan for an event you're putting on to cover some external environmental factors or internal environmental factors. Some smaller business obviously will cover a wider scope in a smaller business. But when you're sitting down looking at risk management, you've got to consider specifically what you're looking at, what you're taking responsibility for within this plan. The term stakeholders can have different shades of meaning in different contexts. Typically, it refers to people who have vested interest, share or interest in something. And as such, we often take that to mean stockholders, owners, and others who have financial investment in the business. However, in the case of risk management, we need to broaden this definition to include anyone and everyone whose lives and businesses can be negatively impacted by the risk which we're analysing. Not all stakeholders will have the same concerns about a particular risk that might affect your company. And while it's easy to focus on the financial risks, there are a number of other issues that may be issues to stakeholders in the case of crisis striking your company. And an employee will have a totally different view about risk compared to the manager or the owners and investors, as would the community at large. Think about this in terms of activity 3. Okay, why is it advantageous to consider stakeholders throughout the risk management process? There's some thoughts. Benefits your company's profits. Many factors outside your company can create risk for your company. And while you must accept that these exist and they are outside your control, that doesn't mean that you should ignore them or hope they will never raise up their ugly heads to bite you. You can't avoid the political climate and change the political climate, especially around election times. You can't ignore things like the economy, the global financial crisis that occurred back in 2008. You can't ignore how trends, fads, and other changes in society can negatively affect your company. Or again, that legislation, or those new technology, or new applications of existing technology. Reality has a way of getting in the way of our best laid plans, especially when it can cause us trouble. Now, most likely, you won't be creating a totally new risk analysis from scratch, rather updating an already existing analysis. Except this would be in the case of new business ventures, where there's new products or new business units to your company. However, even if you're creating a totally new analysis, there are probably some contingency plans already in existence. As part of your preparation to start your risk analysis, it's important to investigate what's already in place. Both see how it can be incorporated in your plans and to review it for strengths and weaknesses, what you're doing good, and what you could do better. It's quite possible there are already adequate plans in place for some of the risks you're going to be working on. And if so, there's no need to redo that work. It's already been done. On the other hand, just accepting a weak plan and incorporating into yours can make you liable in the eyes of the company for that poor planning. So keep that in mind. Your company is involved in a large number of interlocking activities, all of which have something to do with your ability to function, providing products and services to customers. And while all of those activities are probably necessary to success your organisation, some of them are more critical than others. While necessary, whether or not your maintenance department cleans the offices in the facility is not a critical task. Your staff can manage a work a couple of days in a dirty office. However, whether or not your main computer system is working would probably have a great impact on your company's ability to conduct business. Some questions you can ask yourself when thinking about what are the critical success factors in your business may be some of those shown on the slide. Where does my company's income come from? What affects my company's reputation in the marketplace? What functions are critical to ensure my company can continue operating? Are there some we can do without for a day or a week? Which company's goals are essential to ensure continued operations? And how would a delay in the completion of these goals affect the company? How many shareholders are affected by temporary cessation of any functions? You might find it useful to do a SWOT analysis as part of this. In business, we use SWOT a lot to help review problems and issues in your business. Activity 5 requires you a SWOT analysis. This process works well when you're reviewing risk in your business, because what you look at is your strengths, the things you're good at in relation to this risk. What does your company do well in relation to this particular risk? At the same time, of course, what does your company not do so well? Identifying the weaknesses that you have, the things you don't do so well, it gives you the opportunity to see if you can improve those through training or other areas to improve those to strengths. Also, of course, opportunities. New products, reducing costs, taking on new technology to get faster and better at things. Not forgetting, of course, threats. Competitors, losing major customers, your supply lines, all these may be threats when you're looking at risk analysis. So again, keep this in mind. Like many management activities, risk management needs goals and targets that can be measured. Hence, we look at SMART goals again. And activity 6 requires you to look at SMART goals. Remember, a SMART goal has to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. We're saying here really simply that if you're going to measure your performance, you need to be able to do it in terms that can be measured. So hence we talk about SMART goals. In activity 6, you're asked to look at a boat hire company and come up with some goals and objectives for that company. in this operation based on the facts you're given. I'll throw you an idea out there. One of the goals you may want to record is 0 incidents of drowning. You may want to do one for 0 incidents of houseboats becoming permanently stuck on sandbanks. That's 2 examples you may want to use in that future assessment activity. Whatever the risk plan is that you come up with, risk management is not a one-man show. Although they've been assigned the task of developing the risk management assessment and creating the plans to mitigate the crisis, there's no way you can come up with all possible factors by yourself. You need the help of a wide range of professionals within your company and sometimes outside your company. If people do not understand the consequences of not managing risk, they're likely to view the process as yet more administration that takes them away from performing their core duties. So you've got 2 challenges in this situation: consulting and communicating with your team, but also winning their commitment to your plans, because that commitment will generate their involvement. By raising awareness of the importance of managing risk and including people in the process, keeping them informed, you're going to get people engaged and get them proactive in a meaningful way, which is going to make your goals more likely to be achieved. And that's why we often talk about these people called risk management champions. These are people in the organisation who you identify as being really committed to the process. Good clues of where you're going to find these people. They're going to be committed to the belief that management of risk is a good thing. They can speak confidently about the risk and its management, so knowledgeable in the subject. They hold credibility within the organisation. People look up to them and respect their opinion. They have a good understanding of the process being implemented to manage that risk, and they've got a really positive attitude. Always look to draw risk management champions into your team, especially when communicating with colleagues, because as role models and people they're looked up to, it works really well. And by the way, that should help a lot with question 7. The communication process involves the sharing of information through training, education, seminars, newsletters, emails, meetings, presentations. But when you communicate about risk, you need to accept and involve the public and other consumers. You need to plan carefully and evaluate your efforts with a brainstorm, maybe, of your strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats. You've got to listen to public opinion. You need to be honest and transparent. Okay? Make sure you coordinate with internal and external sources and speak clearly and compassionately. You've got to communicate to all these people, but at the same time you've got to recognise that different stakeholders have different interests. And that was a question for you in Activity 8. And here's an example for you. If the management, they might be interested in, obviously, their interest may be the protection of the business, health and safety, and the environment of consumers. And they're going to communicate that through the policies, procedures, and meetings. Their key message might be a strong need for a comprehensive and rigorous risk management process. And they expect to drive that process. But as a member of staff, your perspective might be your continued employment and, of course, health and safety, the enjoyment of your customers. You'll obviously get the information through written policies and staff meetings and training. But for you, the key message might be managing risk helps to make the business successful, which results in your continued employment. And for you, your expected contributions might be practical suggestions for the inclusion in policy and procedures. Okay, so that's the first unit complete. We've looked at some of the principles and terminology of risk. We've looked at what context is in regards to risk and how we should look at scope. We've considered our success factors. We've also looked at how to communicate and creating champions and the importance of consultation. The next session we're going to run will be revolving around identifying risk. In the meantime, my suggestion to you would be to maybe listen to this session one more time, review it with the notes you've got online as well,